The 2025 Inktober challenge has just dropped and I'm going to help you with it. Last year I recorded a live brainstorm thinking about all the different Inktober prompts to help you think about how you can turn those words into illustrations that will actually help your portfolio become more commercial. If you're just doing Inktober as a fun drawing challenge, that's totally cool. But if you're looking for a way to make your illustration portfolio more appealing to clients, I'm going to do another brainstorm for this year's list. I've been an illustration agent for 10 years, so I've got pretty good at recognizing commercial work that clients actually pay for. I've just had a quick glance at the words and it's pretty varied, so I'm sure we're going to get some great ideas for your portfolio. You don't need to copy my ideas, but maybe they'll help you think about what you make in a way that will make your portfolio better. If I was in your shoes, I'd use October to sketch out several different compositions for each word. Then by the end of the month, I'd have a big old bank of ideas for personal projects that I could work on through the whole of the year. If you want more tips on freelance illustration and developing your portfolio, hit subscribe and let's get started. So the first word is mustache, and immediately my mind goes to historical figures here. Portraits are such an important part of an illustrator's portfolio because all kinds of clients want portraits for their projects, from celebrity magazines to corporations who want illustrations of their team members for their website. So I'm thinking about famous historical figures with mustaches. Freddie Mercury, Albert Einstein, Mark Twain. Hulk Hogan died this year, he had a very recognizable handlebar mustache. Frida Kahlo apparently had a mustache too. Many illustrators have made a portrait of Frida Kahlo. She's, I guess she's kind of an inspirational figure, particularly for female artists. Salvador Dali too, he had a little twiddly mustache, or Hitler. So within that short list, we've got the potential to cover a lot of different topics. Music, entertainment, history, literature, art, and science. So the portrait could be for a magazine or a book cover maybe. And if you include some elements from each of these topics, science, music, history, whatever, you could have a really interesting image. Maybe you don't want to draw Hitler, fair enough. But through the First World War and the Second World War, there are all kinds of heroes and villains you could illustrate with historical mustaches. Weave. My mind goes to history with this one too. Weaving has been used to make material throughout history by all kinds of cultures. Could be ancient Egypt, could be Victorian England. You could illustrate the process of weaving or the history of weaving maybe. You could illustrate a Victorian mill with giant industrial looms. My first illustration studio was in an old textiles mill, and the room I sat in used to be full of massive, loud, dangerous weaving machines. I'm not going to embarrass myself by pretending I understand what a hair weave is, but perhaps the word could inspire something related to hairstyles through the ages. Weaving is also a technique used in boxing when you duck under a punch, so there's a sports angle there too. Crown. I'm getting trapped in history here, I think, again. There are plenty of historical ideas for crown when you think about old kings and queens, but maybe if you're a watercolor artist, you could illustrate the crown jewels with like intricate details and reflections and beautiful colors. Crown could also be like a logo design for a fictional or real brand that uses a crown in its branding. We have a brand of paint in the UK here called Crown Paints, and I'm sure you could find many other businesses that are called Crown. There are also a lot of pubs in England called The Crown, and a lot of them have like flappy signs on the outside, and historically they have been illustrated, painted, and they still are today, so that could be a fun one to explore. Murky. Murky water. What else is described as murky? Memories, maybe. My memory is a little bit murky sometimes. That makes me think of maybe an article from a psychology magazine about how unreliable our memories are, or perhaps something crime related where the victim of a crime, their memory becomes a little bit murky about the dangerous situation they were in. Then with murky water, it's not the most appealing topic, but it could be something scientific about the water treatment process maybe, or possibly something a bit more natural like illustrating alligators in a swamp or in the Amazon, something like that. That's a bit of a tricky one, Murky. Good luck with that. Deer. This one seems pretty straightforward. A good opportunity to illustrate a deer in its natural environment, or like a herd of deer, forests, lakes, that kind of thing. The last time I saw a deer was at Chatsworth House, and they have big grounds. It's a big old manor house in England. They have deer living on the grounds, just walking around there. So I was driving through the entrance and there was deer crossing the road. Pretty good. You could also go with a hunting theme too if you want to go that route. Pierce Brosnan is currently starring in the new Thursday Murder Club movie on Netflix. He's a very handsome man and it's current too, so maybe a portrait again or something like a movie poster style image. Pierce also means to be punctured or stabbed. I'm thinking of food packaging where the instructions say pierce the film to open. So if you stick a fork through the plastic on the top of a ready meal before you put it in the microwave, for example, there's a potential food angle you could take there. Or you could go with something more violent or possibly romantic about being pierced through the heart by Cupid's arrow, something to do with mythology maybe. Starfish. Something scientific could work for starfish, depending on your style, or maybe you go for something funny. You know when you're sleeping in a big bed alone, and you might sleep with your limbs outstretched like this? I believe that's called starfishing. This is an easy one, I think, but consider the kinds of clients that might ask you to illustrate a starfish. A science magazine or a natural history magazine, National Geographic, something like that. Or I guess it could be a logo too. How about a design for a wetsuit or some kind of diving equipment? Reckless driving, reckless parenting. What does reckless actually mean? Reckless means that people act in a way which shows they do not care about the danger or the effect their behavior will have on other people. So my mind is going to things like extreme sports, skateboarding, and that's perfect actually, because the Winter Olympics is coming up in February in 2026. So you could illustrate some extreme winter sports where people can be kind of reckless. I can guarantee that marketing and PR agencies will be looking for illustrators to create work for winter sports themed projects over the next couple of months for events around the Olympics. So having some extreme sports in your portfolio is a great idea. Heavy. A few different routes we could take with this one. Heavy metal, a music angle maybe, festival posters, album art, that kind of thing. You could go with heavy metals from a scientific point of view too. Could be the page of a science book for kids, or teaching about the table of elements, or it could be about toxic heavy metals like mercury, maybe. You could illustrate some science experiments, maybe. That'd be great for children's publishing. Heavy weights. So you could look at it from a health and fitness angle, something to do with gyms or exercise. Maybe you could find an article in a magazine about how weightlifting is good for the brain and good for older people too. You could also think about heavy topics like crime, war, depression. That really opens up a lot of ideas. There's a lot of heaviness in the world at the moment. Sweep. What do people sweep? The floor. They sweep lies and secrets under the rug. They sweep minefields looking for explosives. They could also do a supermarket sweep on TV. Sweep was a puppet from a kids' TV show when I was young. Not exactly relevant these days, so maybe not that one. But you might also sweep your hair over your head if you're going bald. I think sweep is a pretty good one, lots to explore there. Sting, a good one to explore animals here. Stingrays, wasps, bees. You could do something really interesting with bees or colony collapse and take it in a kind of an ecological direction. Scorpions, there are others, I'm sure. It could also be about the musician, Sting. And a sting is also a police operation to catch criminals. So there's another sort of crime angle there that you could take. It could also be a comment or phrase that stings emotionally. If you're into lettering design, why not design a beautifully intricate, decorative, stinging insult for somebody that you care about. That could be a really fun series of greetings cards, maybe, with really specific insults. I could see that taking off. Shredded. You could go with the gym, fitness, weight loss route here, promoting a healthy lifestyle or maybe not so healthy a lifestyle, getting super shredded. Maybe something for a men's magazine like Men's Health or GQ. Maybe you could also go a barbecue route here too, which is kind of like the opposite. Shredded meat, pulled pork, that kind of thing. Could be the cover of a recipe book, or you could illustrate the stages of cooking some kind of shredded food. How about a political or business angle with some kind of important top secret documents that have been shredded? Drink, a cocktail or cocktail recipe, a beer can design, a wine label, a special edition water bottle. This is an easy one, I think. My head is in the packaging space, but you could also get into some editorial topics on alcoholism or introducing clean water to remote areas of Africa, maybe. You could also make something for a water charity. Trunk, the trunk of a car, if you're in America. Maybe a good opportunity to get some vehicles in your portfolio. If it's an editorial feature, it could be something like what to pack in your trunk for a camping trip. It could also be the trunk of an elephant, illustrated for a wildlife conservation charity or some kind of safari holiday company. Could also be the trunk of a tree, and you could find an environmental angle. Ragged. Ragged makes me think about being really tired. I've been run ragged. So I'm thinking about magazines about psychology, health and fitness, well-being, mindfulness maybe. Also clothes get ragged when they get old, so you could create something for a clothing donation charity, or maybe even promoting something like Vinted, where you can sell your old clothes online. Ragged is kind of a tough one, I think, but if you go down the clothes or materials angle, or sort of the mindset of being ragged, that opens up a few ideas, I think. Blunder. A blunder is an embarrassing mistake, so that could easily be politically themed or business related. Think about Trump, think about Musk, maybe there's something there. You could probably just wait for a few days and you'll probably be provided with the latest blunder in the news. Everyone's made blunders in their lives though, things that we sort of replay in our own heads. I know I have. So you could illustrate something from your own past. I'm not sure what the commercial value of that would be necessarily, but it might be a therapeutic exercise. Ornate. Ornate architecture, furniture, picture frames, antiques, patterns, decorations. This could be a really good one if you've got a detailed drawing style. You could really stretch yourself with this and make something intricate and ornate. Or you could illustrate like a master craftsperson at work if you want to explore a more human angle. Carpenters, art forgers, wedding cake makers, bakers. That's a pretty interesting angle to explore, I think. Deal. Something casino related or maybe magic related, anything where a pack of cards is dealt. Could also apply to tarot cards. Illustrated tarot cards are very popular right now, but I would suggest just illustrating one or two for your portfolio just to show clients that you can actually do it, rather than illustrating a whole deck, which I think is about 76 cards, because that is an enormous project, especially if you're not getting paid for it. It could also be about a business deal. Harvard Business Review hire illustrators a lot, so do many other business magazines. Forbes, Fast Company, The Economist, Bloomberg. Business magazines actually really seem to like illustration. Arctic, maybe something to do with climate change is an obvious one here. You could also take a wildlife angle, endangered polar bears, for example. It could even simply be an illustration of a winter scene from an Arctic Circle adjacent tourist location. You could do like a travel poster for Norway, for example. You could definitely find a science angle here too, or maybe a historical angle. I don't know who the first person to reach the North Pole was, but that could be interesting to research. You could probably even find a food or drink project in here. Finlandia Vodka could possibly do like an Arctic themed advert for their brand, or maybe some kind of ice cream product with Arctic themed packaging. This one might be a really good opportunity for you to kind of put some constraints on the project. You could limit yourself to certain color palette, white and light blue, for example. That could be a really good challenge. Rivals. This could be about business too. It could be about pop stars or actors who are considered rivals. Maybe you can find a celebrity story about two public figures who've fallen out recently. I can't think of a recent one, to be honest. You could easily go for the sports angle here too. The Super Bowl is coming up in February, another great reason to get some sports images in your portfolio. Maybe boxing too, they're always great rivalries. Or two sports teams that are considered long-term rivals, like the Lakers or the Celtics in basketball, or Liverpool and Manchester United in football, soccer. Blast. Explosives. Maybe a science or a war angle here too. There must be a book out there called The History of Explosives, something like that. So you could illustrate the cover. You could do something about nuclear bombs. Could be more positive though. Having a blast at a party or an event, you could go for an illustrated event poster, something like that. I'm sure there's also some consumer products called Blast too. It makes me think of like energy drinks, maybe a chocolate bar, or possibly cleaning products. Maybe not, but it's worth a Google. Maybe you'll find something that fits the Blast brand there. Button. I bet there's also a book about the history of buttons. A thrilling read from start to finish, said no one. Buttons on clothes, buttons on technology, computers, cameras, phones. Not so many buttons on phones these days. Maybe buttons on phones are making a comeback. Who knows? A button to launch a missile, a button to turn off the TV and go for a walk, a button that says, do not push. What does it mean? What's the story behind the story there? Lots of conceptual editorial angles to take with button, I think. Maybe also a fashion angle too. Firefly, the cult sci-fi TV show Firefly that was cancelled too soon. Maybe you could take a sort of a TV movie poster angle with that. Or simply like a beautiful nighttime scene of fireflies by a lake in a forest, something like that. That could be a really good children's publishing theme. I'm pretty sure there was a World War II fighter plane called a Firefly, so there's a history angle to take there too. My mind is stuck in the sort of historical angle, I think, for a lot of these, but it's because I've just watched a 6-part documentary series on World War II, so I'm just sort of, it's all swimming around my head. Rowdy. Crowds get rowdy. Rowdy crowdy. Could be sports fans, could be protesters standing up to unjust wars or political movements. Parties get rowdy too. A rowdy party scene could be used by a client to advertise something like alcohol. So sort of the more party alcohol brands, you know, possibly, but rowdy has quite a negative feel to it, so maybe not. They'd want it to be rowdy in a positive way, if that's possible. That's a tough one. Inferno. One of Dan Brown's novels is called Inferno, so it could be a book cover for that. Towering Inferno is an old classic movie from the 70s, so it could be a movie poster. Inferno could also have like a religious feel to it too. Dante's Inferno, where he explores the different levels of hell. Inferno just makes me think of a general fire theme. So how about a public information campaign about fire safety for your local fire department, something like that. There's probably also a superhero called Firefly. Almost definitely. If you're into drawing comic book characters, you could look into that. Puzzling. Definitely an editorial sort of conceptual angle here to take for any article that talks about something that's not yet well understood or that scientists are puzzling over. It could be about school exams or tests where kids are puzzling to find the right answer. So there's kind of an education theme there. You could also think about straightforward puzzles and games, the act of putting a puzzle together. All kinds of metaphors you could bring in here for different topics where people have to think a lot. Onion. What about a satirical, funny, illustrated cartoon for one of The Onion's fake news articles? If you don't know The Onion, look them up because there's some hilarious articles on there and could be ripe for illustrating. Or you could go down route 1 here with food, how to chop an onion, 101 uses for an onion. From a health point of view, you could go and look for an article about the FODMAP diet, which I think excludes onions. Or what about my favourite book, The History of the Onion? Just kidding, but I bet it exists. Skeletal. Do you know what's at the end of October? Halloween. And do you know what people dress up as at Halloween? Skeletons, sometimes. Sexy skeletons. You can find a fun angle in there, I'm sure. You could also go for something more scientific or medical about human skeletons or animal skeletons, dinosaur bones, something like that. Skeletal also makes me think of engineering, bridges, or an airplane's wing has like a skeletal structure to it too. Vacant. Vacant could be an article for a travel magazine about hotels or Airbnbs. Maybe there's an area of the world that used to be popular with tourists, but now is largely vacant because of circumstances. I imagine holidays to Israel aren't so popular at the moment. Vacant also makes me think of vacant stares. So it could be a crime angle and you could go for the vacant stare of a serial killer, or a mental health angle, the vacant stare of someone suffering with depression. Finally, award. You could go with an Olympics angle for this one too. Gold medals being awarded, points being awarded for sick half-pipe tricks. You could illustrate judges holding up their scores. Other things that are awarded are medals for soldiers or other heroes who have done something brave, Nobel Prize winners. You could pick a book that's been awarded a Pulitzer Prize or a Booker Prize and illustrate the cover in your own style. You could pick any kind of weird competition from around the world and illustrate a fake article about that. Maybe the World Memory Championships, or the Extreme Ironing World Cup, or maybe the Darwin Awards. That's a fun one. If you don't know what that is, it's worth looking up. Yeah, award is a good one. All right, that's my brainstorm for this year's Inktober list. Hope it helps you avoid puzzling over it for too long. If you enjoyed it, don't be reckless. Award me by clicking the subscribe button. You don't want to make a blunder by missing the next lesson. Stay rowdy, and remember, if life gives you an onion, make it ornate. See you next time. Mustache.